Have you ever heard that true love protects and never lets go? What if I told you that the biggest proof of love isn't what people promise, but what they do when everything seems lost? This is the story of Camille, a young pregnant woman who was abandoned at the worst moment of her life. But an unexpected encounter changed her fate forever. Get ready for a story that will challenge your beliefs, break down prejudices, and show that even in abandonment, love can bloom where you least expect it. Camille grew up in a small town surrounded by mountains and dirt roads, where dreams felt far away, hidden behind the dust and heat of the countryside. From a young age, she learned that life wasn't kind. Her father, a man with a fiery temper, ruled the house with an iron fist and harsh words. Her mother, quiet and submissive, endured everything in the name of a marriage that was really a prison. I just wish they could be happy one day, Camille would think, watching the two drift apart, stuck in a cycle of arguments and disappointment. From early on, Camille carried a dream that seemed impossible in that world, the dream of a happy marriage, of true love, something different from what surrounded her. She wanted a man who would look at her with tenderness, who would love her with respect and devotion. But her childhood was marked by fear and insecurity. Her father, often violent, passed away when Camille was still little, leaving a huge void and many open wounds. Her mother, broken by the loss, couldn't rebuild her life, and Camille had to step up as protector, woman before her time, caring for her younger siblings and working to help support the household. Despite all that, she held a pure hope in her heart. When she reached her teens, Camille found not just a job but a refuge at the local bar. There, among tables and bottles, laughter and stories of passing strangers, she dreamed of better days. That's where Esteban showed up. Esteban had an easy smile, one of those that seemed to open doors without trying, and eyes that held a kind of secret, like he could see beyond the surface. He seemed to understand more than he said, and that made Camille feel special, as if he saw something in her no one else did. From their first meeting at the bar, he was different from the other men she knew. Kinder, more present, even amid simple conversations, between sips and laughs that rarely reached her ears. Esteban seemed to bring a breath of hope to her tough life. Over the next 2 months, he won her heart with sweet words and love vows that sounded too sincere to be fake. He promised her a future where she'd never have to fear loneliness again. He vowed to be the safe harbor she had always dreamed of, a home where love would be shelter, not a prison. Camille let herself believe in that dream. Every message, every secret meeting, every shy touch in the car built in her chest an almost innocent faith that she had finally found what she'd been looking for. For the first time in a long while, she felt someone wanted to care for her, someone who looked at her with love, not judgment. But promises are fragile, and often they're made to be broken. That fateful afternoon, when she finally found the courage to tell Esteban she was pregnant, that inside her was a life, a piece of hope, his smile vanished. The eyes that once made her dream filled with anger and fear, revealing a man she'd never really known. The silence that fell then was sharp and heavy, like a sentence. What was a step of courage and love for her was a trigger that changed everything for him. "You're crazy. I'm married, Camille." His voice screamed inside the car, full of fury and desperation. She tried to speak, to explain, but no words came out. Just the feeling of falling into an abyss with no way out. He then pulled over on the side of a dirt road, a move that sealed her fate. Without any explanation, without a goodbye glance, he opened the door and shoved her out. Camille fell onto the hot dust, her fragile body trembling, her heart shattered into pieces so small it seemed impossible to put them back together. The loneliness crushed her shoulders, like the whole world had shut down around her, leaving only the emptiness and silence of the road. She stayed there, still for a moment, feeling the suffocating weight of being completely alone. No bag, no shelter, no one to hear her despair. Just the cruel truth growing inside her, a paralyzing fear threatening to swallow her last bit of hope. Then, in a burst of pain and desperation, Camille screamed. Her voice cut through the dry afternoon air, echoing between the trees and the wind. "Esteban! Esteban, please! Don't leave me! The cry seemed to escape from her, but no one answered. The emptiness answered. She felt tears stream down, burning her skin, while the echo of that name faded into the silence of the road. But in the middle of that brutal betrayal, that pain threatening to consume her whole, there was a spark, a tiny, almost invisible flame, but stubborn nonetheless. With an effort that went against everything her body begged for, Camille took a deep breath. She felt the sun start to set, painting the sky a dull orange, while the cold bit at her exposed skin like invisible blades. Her legs wobbled with every step, her weak body almost giving out. Hunger throbbed in her belly, but it was the growing pain, the result of barely knowing she was 1 month pregnant, and the heartbreak that tore her apart from the inside that consumed her. No money, no food, no shelter, no plan, just a faint, nearly extinguished strength holding on with every passing minute. The wind kicked up dry dust that stuck to her sweaty face, while her throat burned, begging for water that didn't exist in this godforsaken wasteland. She fell to her knees under the shade of a withered tree, clutching her belly as if she could shield that fragile life from the cruel world around her. Dust mixed with silent tears streaming down her face, and though the scream got stuck in her throat, nothing came out, only an overwhelming, suffocating emptiness. Suddenly, the sky changed. Heavy, dark clouds closed in like a threatening embrace. The wind turned into a howl, carrying the omen of something worse to come. Then, without warning, the rain began to fall, cold drops that soon turned into a cutting downpour, pounding her skin, soaking into her bones, sending a deep chill through her. Camille shivered, curling up into herself. The storm seemed ready to swallow her whole, the cold biting her skin, the water drenching her thin clothes that offered no protection anymore. Night fell brutally, darkness thickened like an invisible prison, and with it, fear grew, a raw, primal fear tightening her chest and making her breath hitch. She tried to get up, but the slippery mud made every step an almost impossible struggle. Her teeth chattered, her body shook uncontrollably, and the pain from hunger and fear hit her in ever stronger waves. Desperation took over. Finally, sobs escaped, a cry of agony and a plea for help lost in the storm. Then, from somewhere distant and almost inaudible, came a different sound, the steady, rhythmic pounding of horse hooves on wet earth. With her eyes nearly blinded by rain and tears, she lifted her head and saw a silhouette emerging from the darkness, a man on horseback, moving slowly, like the last light at the end of the tunnel. This was the chance that could save her. But the storm still raged, and the future was a dark mystery. He dismounted carefully, his feet sinking into the soaked ground. The rain lashed against his skin, but he didn't seem to mind. Weak, soaked to the bone, hair plastered to her face, clothes muddy and dripping, Camille trembled, curled up, holding her belly with both hands as if that could shield her from the cold and fear surrounding her. For a moment, he hesitated. His gut told him to ignore her, to move on, to leave behind that uncomfortable scene, living proof of wounds he himself carried. The past had taught him helping others didn't always bring reward. Often it just meant pain, suffering, and more loneliness. But there, in that woman, in that raw vulnerability, something stirred inside him. A voice inside insisted, a sense of urgency he couldn't understand. He took a deep breath and, with a steadiness that surprised even himself, knelt beside her. "Hey," he said softly, trying to be the voice she needed. "Are you all right? Tell me, can I help?" She lifted her eyes, watery and full of fear and confusion. Rain streamed down her face, mixing with silent tears. For a moment, Camille didn't answer, just tried to steady her quickened breath, the cold invading her bones, and the fear almost paralyzing her. "Please," she finally whispered, her voice barely there. I don't know where to go. I'm scared." He helped her sit up, trying to shield what little he could from the storm still roaring around them. "You need a place to stay," he said, his voice firm but kind. "I can help." Camille looked at him, wary and tired, her eyes searching for any reason to trust this stranger. "Why would you care about me?" she asked, doubt heavy in her voice. He didn't answer right away, staring into the storm that surrounded them, as if searching for an answer he didn't have. "My name's Jacob," he said finally, holding out his hand. "You can trust me." She hesitated, but on that dark, cold night, in that moment of complete vulnerability, there was no other choice. She took his hand and, with his help, stood up. He led her to the horse, carefully lifting her up and shielding her with his own body from the wind and rain. For the first time in hours, Camille felt a flicker of safety, a glimpse of hope. The ride out to the farm was slow and quiet, broken only by the sound of rain and the horse's hooves sinking into the mud. Jacob didn't say much, but his eyes spoke volumes, a mix of worry, responsibility, and something he was still trying to figure out himself. When they arrived at the farm, he helped her down carefully, leading her to a simple but cozy house. "This is where you'll be safe," he assured her, opening the door to let her inside. Camille, still trembling, felt the warmth of the house wrap around her soaked, exhausted body. The soft glow of candlelight lit the rustic walls, bringing a comfort that felt almost unreal after everything she'd been through. The scent of burning wood from the stove mixed with a faint smell of herbs, something soothing even in the hardest moments. He helped her settle into a chair by the fire, where the heat began to thaw the cold that seemed to have settled inside her. Without a word, Jacob grabbed a clean, soft towel and gently dried Camille's wet hair and face. Every slow, careful gesture showed a genuine care she hadn't felt in a long time. As she closed her eyes for a moment, soaking in that quiet attention, he moved toward the simple kitchen. With steady hands, he prepared a hot soup, a rustic broth, but full of flavor, that seemed to carry all the strength and comfort Camille desperately needed. Steam rose, spreading a welcoming aroma throughout the small house. When he returned holding the bowl, she was a little calmer, her trembling eased by the warmth of the fire. "Try to eat a little," he said, setting the soup in front of her. She hesitated, her eyes still watery, but hunger outweighed pain and fear. Carefully, she brought the spoon to her lips, tasting the simple, comforting food. As she ate, a comfortable silence settled between them. She noticed that beneath his rough exterior, there was a kindness in his eyes, a willingness to help that didn't need to be spoken. That night, while the world outside continued to crumble under storms and darkness, a faint light began to flicker inside that little house. The promise that maybe, just maybe, life could start over. Camille woke up feeling the gentle warmth of a shy morning sun filtering through the window. She was lying in a simple but clean and cozy room. The walls were made of light wood, and the smell of firewood burning on the stove mingled with the fresh morning air. For a moment, she stayed still, trying to piece together memories from the night before. The storm, the rain, the cold, and then that outstretched hand that pulled her from loneliness. It all felt like a dream too tangled to be real. She sat up slowly, still feeling tired and sore. Carefully, she stood, adjusting her damp clothes, and walked slowly to the door. Opening it, she was greeted by the warm scent of burning wood and the comforting aroma of fresh coffee filling the house. In the kitchen, the scene was simple but thoughtfully arranged. A light wooden table was set with fresh bread, seasonal fruit, and a steaming mug of coffee. Every detail seemed designed to offer comfort and safety, something that made Camille feel oddly protected. As she sat down to eat, her gaze drifted to the window, where she saw the man who had rescued her. He was in the stable, patiently brushing the horse in a near-meditative rhythm. The steady, calm motion contrasted sharply with the storm still raging in her heart. She took a bite of bread, and with her mouth still full, heard the kitchen door open. "Good morning," he said, his voice calm but carrying a strange gentleness. Camille lifted her eyes and tried to smile, even though her voice trembled. "Good morning. Thank you for everything last night," she said, trying to hide the vulnerability she felt. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't shown up." He nodded, as if that was to be expected. "You slept in the living room chair," he said, settling into an armchair near the fire. "That's why I put you in the guest room. I thought you'd be more comfortable there." "That was very kind of you," she replied, feeling her throat tighten. "You don't even really know me, and yet you helped me." He looked away for a moment, as if battling memories he wanted to keep locked away. "The world isn't always so cruel," he murmured. "And sometimes, it's us who need to remember that." Camille stayed quiet, processing those simple words, which carried unexpected weight. "What were you doing alone out on that road?" he asked, breaking the silence with a tone of genuine concern. She took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on the fire. "I worked at a bar," she began hesitantly. "I met a man named Stephen. He seemed different from the others, like he had something special. Before long, he made me believe things could be different for me, that I could have a future, a family." She swallowed the emotion threatening to spill over. "But then I found out he was married. And when I told him I was pregnant, he just left me on some random road. No money, no one around." Jacob watched her closely, his eyes showing a mix of sadness and barely held back anger. "So you just stayed there, not knowing where to go?" he asked. "Yes," she confirmed. "I had no clue what to do. All I knew was I couldn't give up." She took a deep breath, trying to keep herself together. "And then you found me," she finished, hope creeping into her voice. He gave a small smile, the first open expression she'd seen from him since they met. "I went out yesterday because a foal ran off from the farm," he explained. "I needed to find him before he got hurt. And then he showed up here this morning. It was luck or fate." Jacob kept watching her, still worried, then finally asked, "Do you have any family? Anyone you can count on?" Camille took a deep breath, her eyes drifting off as painful memories surfaced. "My parents," she started, her voice trembling. "My mom passed away recently. It was too hard for me. My dad, he was a tough man, never gave me the love I needed. He died when I was just a kid." She closed her eyes for a moment, fighting back the emotion. "And I don't want to go back to that bar," she whispered. "The memories, the place, it all hurts too much." Jacob was silent for a few seconds, weighing her words carefully. "Then you and the baby can stay here," he said at last, with a firmness that left no room for doubt. "On the farm. You'll be safe here." Camille looked at him, surprised and grateful. "Thank you," she said again, "for giving me a chance." He nodded, still quiet. That morning marked the beginning of a new routine. Through silences and small gestures, a slow, fragile bond formed between two people carrying deep scars. Jacob, though closed off, was beginning to open up to the idea of caring for someone beyond his own pain. Camille, in turn, found in the farmer a strength she thought she had lost, the support she needed to face whatever lay ahead. In the days following that rescue morning, life on Jacob's farm unfolded with a calmness that felt almost magical to Camille. Each dawn brought a breath of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. The birdsong mixed with the rustling leaves and the whispering wind, creating a natural melody that quieted her restless mind. There were no more harsh noises from the bar, the drunken voices, the fake laughs, the looks she'd learned to fear. Here, in this quiet refuge, there was space to breathe. Right from the first day, Jacob showed he wasn't just a rough, reserved man, but someone with a hidden depth beneath his tough exterior. She helped where she could, cleaning dusty windows, watering plants in the small garden, learning to feed the animals under the farmer's watchful eye. Every task, no matter how small, chipped away at the weight of hopelessness. The feeling of doing something useful rekindled her self-worth. Jacob watched her quietly, a faint look of care in his eyes every time she pushed herself physically. "Take care of yourself," he said firmly whenever she overdid it. "You've got to save your strength, for you and the baby." Camille felt the warmth of that genuine concern, something that went far beyond just the word. One day, while she was watering flowers, she felt his hand lightly touch hers, guiding her. The contact was brief, almost subtle, but enough to send a shiver down her spine. They exchanged a look, heavy with something words couldn't capture. Days turned into weeks, and Jacob's presence became a pillar in Camille's life. He woke early to tend the animals, make coffee, and make sure everything was ready before she got up. Often, she found the kitchen already set when she came downstairs, and the simplicity of that gesture touched her deeply. One morning, he surprised her with a small, hand-knit blanket, soft and warm, to keep her cozy on cold dawns. "For you and the baby," he explained with a shy smile, the first real one he'd given her. Camille hugged the blanket to her chest, moved. "It's beautiful," she said, voice catching. "Thank you." On the farm, every step was a new discovery. She learned to recognize the smell of wet earth, listen to the cows' low calls, and the distant jingle of bells. Jacob patiently taught her how to care for the horse, fix the fences, and feed the animals properly. In return, Camille shared stories from her childhood, her broken dreams, and even small happy moments that made her smile. One day, when the sun was high in the sky and the gentle afternoon warmth wrapped the farm in a lazy calm, Camille decided to pick some fruit from the orchard. With a wicker basket in her hands and bare feet sinking slightly into the soft earth, she felt, for the first time in a long while, at peace. The birds singing, the lazy sway of the leaves, and the light breeze brushing through her hair seemed to whisper that maybe, just maybe, she'd found a fresh start. She hummed quietly to herself, distracted, stretching to reach a higher apple. But as she stepped forward, a thin, nearly invisible branch scratched her forehead. "Ow!" she exclaimed, bringing her hand to her face. The cut was small, but the sting was instant, and a thin trickle of blood ran down. She frowned, wiped it off with the back of her hand, and decided to ignore it. She kept picking fruit, thinking it was no big deal. But when she got back to the house with her basket full, she found Jacob on the porch, wiping his hands on a rag after feeding the horses. He looked at her, and the moment his eyes caught the red scratch on her forehead, they narrowed sharply. "What happened to you?" he asked, stepping closer with determined strides. "Oh, it was just a branch. Got distracted picking apples. Didn't see the blasted tree fighting back," she said, forcing a smile to downplay it. But Jacob didn't look amused. He stared at her with that firm expression, heavy with quiet worry. "Come with me. Let's take care of that properly." Camille hesitated for a second, but gave in when she saw the seriousness on his face. They went inside the kitchen, where Jacob pulled a first aid kit from a drawer. He moistened a cotton ball with some antiseptic and moved closer, stopping right in front of her. "This'll sting a bit," he warned softly, like asking permission to touch. "Go ahead," she replied, meeting his eyes, already bracing for the burn. When the cotton touched her skin, she made a face. "Ow! You said just a little sting." "Guess I was wrong," he said with a crooked smile. "I'm better with horses than I am with promises." She chuckled softly, even though her skin was still burning. "I've noticed, you talk to the horses more than to me." "They listen better," he joked, looking at her with a rare spark in his eyes. Camille looked away, embarrassed but smiling. He finished cleaning the cut and carefully put a small bandage on it. Then he stepped back and folded his arms. "All set. Now, you just have to promise me you'll watch where you're going. And you promise to always take care of me when I'm not looking," she teased, though a quiet truth slipped out without meaning to. He didn't answer right away, just looked at her with that serious gaze that said way more than words. Then he nodded. "If you let me, yeah, I'll take care of you." The silence that followed was thick, filled with something sweet and strange. A connection growing slowly, like roots digging deep into the earth. "Thank you. Really," she whispered. "You're already part of this place," he murmured quietly. She didn't reply, just watched him walk over to the sink, grab the basket of fruit, and pick up an apple. "Need help with the pie again, or are you still traumatized from last time?" "I'll only accept help if you promise not to put salt instead of sugar again," she laughed. "Once. Once only, and they never let me forget." That was unforgettable. And they laughed together, a light laugh, a home laugh. But not everything was calm. The shadow of the past still lingered, threatening the fragile peace beginning to bloom. Camille still woke up in the middle of the night, sweating, with the name Stephen stuck in her throat. Sometimes she'd instinctively touch her belly, as if to make sure the baby was still there, safe and growing despite everything. And when she opened her eyes and saw the simple wooden ceiling of the farmhouse bedroom, she felt relief and fear. Fear of letting herself feel again. Fear that this was only temporary. Fear that Jacob, kind as he was, might disappear like the others. She noticed the way he looked at her, especially when he thought no one was watching. It was a look heavy with curiosity, held back admiration, and caution. But there was also something she couldn't quite figure out, maybe pain. Camille never asked, and he never told. But she heard him sometimes, pacing through the house late at night. Heavy footsteps, like a man carrying too many memories on his shoulders. One morning, when she passed by his room carrying a basket of clean clothes, the door cracked open just enough to reveal a photo on the nightstand. A young woman with eyes strikingly like Jacob's, smiling, a bow in her hair. Camille didn't have the courage to ask. But that day, while they were picking green beans in the field, she gathered the courage to take a chance. "You had a sister?" she asked quietly, not looking at him directly, her hands busy with the fresh pods. Jacob paused for a moment. The silence between them stretched out for what felt like forever before he answered. "Yeah, I did. Clara." His voice came low and rough. "She was younger than me. Strong, smart. Gone too soon." She nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his words. "I'm sorry. Thanks." They said nothing more. But in that brief exchange, something between them shifted. A bridge was built, one made of shared pain that, though different, understood each other. In the days that followed, the silences stopped feeling awkward. Jacob got closer. He touched her hand more often. Sometimes, walking to the corral, their hands would meet without a word. They'd just stay like that, fingers intertwined, as if either movement might break the fragile thread connecting them. One cloudy afternoon, Camille was sitting on the porch step, sewing a hem on one of his shirts, when she felt a faint movement in her belly. She gasped, surprised. The needle slipped from her fingers. "What's wrong?" Jacob asked, coming right beside her. She placed both hands on her stomach, eyes misty. He just moved. For the first time. Jacob crouched next to her, unsure what to do. "Can I?" he asked with his eyes, pointing at her belly. She nodded, moved. He gently laid his hand on the skin beneath her cotton dress and waited. And then he felt it. Almost imperceptible, a tiny nudge, like a butterfly flapping its wings. But to Jacob, it hit like a thunderclap right in his chest. He pulled his hand away slowly, as if he'd just touched a miracle. "He's strong. Like his mom," he said, trying to hold back the emotion rising in his throat. Camille smiled, eyes shimmering. "I'm still scared, you know?" "Me too." She looked at him, surprised by his confession. "But you're so steady." "Just looks," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Inside, there's a lot broken." She reached out and touched his hand. "Me too." Their hands stayed there, locked together. And in that moment, she realized something new, or maybe something that had always been there, growing slowly like a flower blooming when no one's watching. The day started quiet on the farm, with the sun casting golden rays over the fields and a gentle breeze rustling the tree branches. Jacob had gone into the nearby town to sort things out with the local vet and pick up some supplies. Before leaving, he'd left the coffee ready and a note on the table for Camille. "Back before lunch. Lock up if anything comes up." Camille smiled reading it, feeling a strange peace in her chest. She was starting to believe life could be different here, that maybe she and the baby had found a safe place. But the calm didn't last long. The crunch of tires on gravel at the farm's entrance made her stomach flip. Instinctively, she went to the window and peeked out. A black car, unfamiliar, pulled up in front of the house. Her heart froze the moment the door opened and out stepped Stephen. He looked thinner, scruffy with a few days' worth of stubble, wearing a dark, rumpled jacket like he hadn't slept in days. But his eyes, those eyes still held that dangerous mix of charm and venom. Camille stepped back, her heart pounding. He knocked firmly on the door, then softer. "Camille, it's me. Please open up. I just want to talk." She didn't answer. She stayed behind the wall, like she could disappear. "I know you're there," he kept going, voice low, almost apologetic. I made mistakes, I know that. But things have changed." Against every instinct, Camille cracked the door open a sliver. "What are you doing here?" Stephen sighed and looked at her with an expression that almost looked like pain. "I broke up with Veronica. Didn't make sense to keep going after everything. I realized I was wrong. You were right all along. I was a coward." Camille frowned. "You left me pregnant, alone, on some dirt road. And now you show up here like nothing happened." He took a step forward, but she stood her ground. "I came to get you," he said quietly. "I've been thinking a lot. I can't stop thinking about you and the baby." Camille blinked, shocked. For a moment, something inside her wavered, the girl who once believed in his promises. But just for a moment. "It's too late, Stephen. Way too late." He forced a smile, his eyes growing colder. "You don't have to decide now. Just come with me. We can talk it out. I can take care of you both. I've got money, a good job. You deserve comfort. Our son deserves it." Camille looked him squarely in the eye, unwavering. "No, I don't want comfort. I want peace. And I never want to live in fear again. You're never going to change." The regret vanished from his face as if it never existed. His eyes narrowed. "So that's it. You're going to reject me? Throw it all away for some farmhand?" She widened her eyes. "This isn't about Jacob. It's about me. I finally chose myself." Stephen lunged quickly, grabbing her arm hard. "You're gonna regret this, Camille. You'll regret defying me." She struggled to break free, yelling, "Let me go." The back door slammed open with a bang. Jacob stormed in like a tornado, eyes blazing. The look on his face said it all. "Take your hands off her." Stephen spun around, surprised, but didn't let go. "Oh, so you're the farm's hero. The damsel's knight." Jacob stepped up with steady, determined strides, jaw clenched. Camille broke free and stepped back, her chest heaving with fear and relief. "I'm giving you one chance to walk out that door in one piece," Jacob said. "Just one. What if I don't want to?" Stephen taunted, smirking. Jacob's punch was quick and clean, hitting him hard on the jaw. Stephen staggered and dropped to his knees. "You don't come back here. Ever." Jacob's voice was low but sharp as a blade. Stephen slowly got up, touching his bloodied face. He laughed. "This isn't over, farmer. She'll show you who she really is. She already did. She's someone I respect. Someone who deserves to be happy." Jacob stood between him and Camille. Stephen spat on the ground, glanced at Camille one last time with contempt, and left. Silence. Camille dropped to her knees, shaking, tears streaming down. Jacob went to her, knelt down, and wrapped her tightly in his arms. She clung to him like he was her only ground. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" "No, not physically. But he hurt you." He gently touched her face with the tips of his fingers. She nodded. "Thank you for coming back. I felt like I had to. He took a deep breath. What if I hadn't? What if I'd been too late? She looked him straight in the eyes. But you came, and you saved me. Jacob closed his eyes for a second, as if her words had cracked the wall he'd built around himself for years. And right there, on the wooden floor of that room full of painful memories, two broken souls found shelter in each other. But they both knew the past was still lurking, and that love sometimes hurts before it heals. After that day, everything changed. The showdown with Stephen wasn't just a break from the past. It was a turning point for Camille, and for Jacob too. Fear gave way to courage. Distrust turned into trust. And the awkward silence that used to hang between them was replaced by conversations, shy laughter, and looks that said more than 1,000 words. Jacob, who'd been haunted by his sister's ghost and the pain of his failed marriage, started letting the present into his heart. He began to let the future in, with Camille by his side. And she, who had so often doubted her own worth, found fertile ground to grow. Far from the bar, the humiliation, the scornful stares. Here she was seen, loved, even if he hadn't yet said it out loud. But she could feel it. Months passed. The farm changed with the seasons. Leaves turned golden, the air grew crisp, and Camille's belly grew bigger every morning. Jacob prepared the nursery with his own hands. He built a wooden crib with the utmost care, sanding, hammering, adjusting, until every corner felt like a warm hug. He hung a light curtain by the window and placed fresh flowers in a vase nearby. Camille watched it all with teary eyes, her heart tight with gratitude. He didn't have to do any of it. But he did. Gently. With presence. With love, even if he never called it that. Then, one quiet early morning, the sound of the wind through the trees was broken by Camille's cry of pain. "Jacob," she called, breathless. "I think it's time." He jumped out of the bed in the other room, crossing the hallway like the floor had disappeared beneath him. "Are you sure?" he asked, eyes wide, already moving, grabbing the bag she'd packed weeks ago. She nodded, gripping her belly tightly. "I'm sure." Jacob helped her carefully, called the midwife from the village, and took her to the room. He prepared warm water, towels, left the door unlocked, and stayed by her side the whole time. When the midwife arrived, she found Jacob holding Camille's hand tightly, sweating almost as much as she was. "Breathe, Camille. Just like that. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." She squeezed his hand, caught between pain and tears. "I'm scared." "Me too," he replied with a tight half-smile. "But we'll get through this together, remember?" Time seemed to stand still. The sun began to rise as Camille's cries filled the room, mixed with the midwife's encouraging words and Jacob's tense breathing. And then, finally, the cry. Strong, loud, alive. The midwife smiled and handed the baby to Camille, wrapped in a soft pale blue blanket. "He's a strong boy, healthy." Camille cried, her hands trembling as she touched his little face. Jacob stepped closer slowly, like he was afraid to break the moment. She looked at him, her face glowing with tears and the golden light of dawn. "Want to hold him?" He hesitated. I don't know how." Camille gently took his hand. "You've been holding my heart all this time. You'll figure out how to hold him too." Jacob swallowed hard and took the baby into his arms with reverent care. His eyes welled up as the little one curled his tiny fingers around his. "Hey, champ," he whispered. "Welcome to the world." Camille watched them both, and for the first time in a long, long while, she felt whole. She didn't know what the future would hold, didn't know what fate had in store. But right there, on that soft morning, surrounded by the smell of wet earth and the sound of their baby's cry, she knew she wasn't alone anymore. And maybe true love didn't need grand promises, just presence, devotion, and two hearts ready to start over. Together.